Augustus, the first emperor, the man who created the Roman Empire, the man who defeated Cleopatra and Mark Antony and sent them to their grave, the man hailed as the son of a god, is also a man who kind of had the reputation of being a bit of a bitch. Seriously, Augustus was called a coward more than once, and the only battles with death he had was against his own weak body and health. In actual fights, his biggest victories were with him hiding behind either the muscle of Mark Antony or the muscle of his childhood friend Agrippa. Augustus was weak, physically. But aside from the physical aspects, Augustus was a
genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
Man, Augustus had a mind so sharp he could mess around and cut his head off. You know what I mean? A heart so cold he could and did kill thousands of his own people just for money. A heart so cold that even friends and family could be dead to him in a beat. Yet at the same time, Augustus had a heart that beat for the people of Rome. It is as contradicting as it sounds, and that's because there's more to Augustus than just him being the first emperor. His story is that of how the weakling Gaius Octavius became one of the most powerful and important human beings ever, how he became Caesar Augustus. Augustus was not born as Augustus, and he wasn't even born in August. He was born on September 23rd in 63 BCE as Gaius Octavius, and throughout most of his life before he adopted the name Augustus, he was known as Octavian. So we will go with that name too. Octavian was a weak boy, born into a powerful family. His great uncle was Julius Caesar, and since Octavian's father died when he was just 4 years young, Octavian was partly raised and largely educated by Caesar's sister Julia. But that doesn't exactly mean that Octavian was destined for greatness. If anything, the young boy, it looked more like he was destined to die. The boy was always sick. With what is hard to say 2,000 something years later, but he was that kid with asthma and allergies and food intolerance and climate intolerance and migraine and dental pains and a weak immune system. You get me? Man was not picked in PE. Not even last, just not picked at all. It was like, bro, coach, we'll play 4 and 5. We're good. We got this. So that didn't exactly scream greatness at the time. It definitely screamed nerd. And good thing Augustus, or Octavian, was born wealthy, because the kid would have been bullied to hell. And if this were a movie or an anime, the weak genius with a sickly constitution but great ambition would definitely grow up to dominate everybody. But luckily this is real life. And actually, that's exactly what happened. I'm just realizing that's exactly what happened. Octavian, or Augustus, is the OG archetype for the nerd turned tyrant. But while Octavian was growing up, that tyrant was still Julius Caesar. Well, the term tyrant depends on which side you stand on. To the Republic-loving people, yes, Julius Caesar was a tyrant because he wanted sole power. But to the people of the actual Republic, the populace, the people, Caesar was a hero, the man, because the Republic at this point in time was way past its due date. The Roman Republic was crumbling hard. And you have to know that the idea of a republic was to have no more kings rule over Rome, but to elect those in power, to elect a senate and consuls who rule in short terms and then are re-elected so that they truly represent the people. That was the idea. That's what being a republic means by definition. In reality, though, at this point, all those elected to represent The people had to come from elite noble families, and they were completely out of touch with the people they were supposed to represent. Like, it really was like this.
You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg.
Yet, these leaders were in charge of the people of Rome, taxing them mostly for their own gain, them, the rich, getting richer and richer at the expense of the poor, and putting people into power for favors or money, or to create just an ever-repeating cycle of elites in charge. The Roman Republic was corrupt as hell, and the people were fed up. So by the time Julius Caesar came to rise, Rome had been in constant civil wars for almost a century, and the people hardly ever knew even a decade of peace. It was civil war after civil war. Rome was a mess, an uncivilized backwater hole far from the great Roman Empire that we now know. But the Roman Republic had potential. And that's what Caesar was aware of, because he knew that the people in power would never allow the system of the Republic to change until someone makes it change. So Caesar was like, yes, me, I got this. And he strong-armed his way into power, waltzed down the elites, and gave back to the people. While he had a little bit of power, he gave back to the people, and they loved him for it. He made their lives better, and the lives of the nobles and the Senate, he made their lives worse. So the nobles and the Senate, they killed him for it. On March 15th in 44 BC, forever known as the Ides of March, Caesar was lured into a fake meeting by 60 senators, who then stabbed dictator Caesar in the name of the Republic. And the main conspirator you need to know about was Brutus, who deserves a little more attention in this video. Brutus was the son of Servilia. Servilia was the forever affair of Caesar. Servilia and Caesar were on and off for longer than Rachel and Ross, so long it's literally lost to history. So it could be that Brutus was actually Caesar's son from a teenage night in heat. Nobody knows. Whatever the case though, Caesar loved Brutus almost like a son. But Brutus really loved the Republic. He really believed in its ideas, that system. He really thought that it was best and fair, that no king would ever rule again, because kings and their whims should never rule. No one ruler can ever be good for a realm. So then Caesar became a lone ruler. Kind of a problem with your kind of dad, Caesar, being a ruler, and Brutus chose to stand with his beliefs, no matter how hard. And since Caesar kept on growing, Brutus had to keep on opposing him at every step. But Brutus kept losing in every battle to the unstoppable force that was Julius Caesar, and yet still, after every victory, Julius Caesar forgave the treacherous Brutus, because he understood.
I presented you with an impossible dilemma. You did only what you thought honorable, I'm sure.
Brutus simply believed in his principles, values. Caesar still loved him. But Brutus still, despite all this, kept on holding on to his principles. He believed in the Republic, and he knew that there was only one way to stop Caesar, who was about to crumble the Republic, and that one way to stop him was death. And only someone Caesar trusts could kill him. Only Brutus could. And I wanted to give you a bit more backstory of how Brutus' train of thought would have been at the time, because Brutus is often painted as pure evil, a pure backstabbing, treacherous piece of crap, but he really believed in the Republic and feared power in the hand of one man. And how many singular people do you know that could really rule well? Brutus was not willing to find out. In his mind, it was either the Republic or Caesar, and he knew.
Sometimes a person has to choose. Sometimes the world forces his hand. If a man knows what he is and remains true to himself, choice is no choice at all. He must fulfill his destiny and become who he is meant to be, however much he may hate it.
I know we haven't gotten to Augustus yet, but all this is super important, and I'm setting the stage. Let me cook. They should let me cook. What? Let me cook. So, on that day in March, it was Brutus who convinced Caesar to attend the meeting and led him into the halls, where he was then assassinated by 60 senators, with Brutus delivering the final blow. And when the deed was done, Brutus thought he did good. He really thought he just saved the Republic, and the people would thank him for it. And the other conspirators, most notably Cassius, expected to be viewed as heroes that stopped the tyrant from seizing power. But they forgot one thing. The people really hated the Republic. They were tired of being oppressed. They were tired of the constant civil wars. One man in charge, a man that cares about them and brings stability and reform and ends the corruption of the nobility. That actually sounded like a good idea right about now. Brutus and Cassius forgot about how much the people actually loved Julius Caesar, but even more important than that, they also forgot about Caesar's trusted general, Caesar's muscle, the man who inherited Caesar's will and fire. They forgot to kill the man who was sure to avenge his friend. They forgot about Mark Antony. Mark Antony was still alive, and he was going to do anything. Yeah, after Caesar died, Mark Antony fled the city. I mean, avenging sounds cool on paper and all, and there's a reason the word has a superhero band named after it, but at this point in time, I mean, what are you gonna do, really? Like, what are you gonna do? A bunch of powerful senators just killed the most powerful man in the city, so Antony booked it the hell out of Rome, which sounds cowardly now, but do know, Antony will be back in force. I mean, one of the men opposing Caesar famously said of Mark Antony surviving this day in March, "The Ides of March was a fine deed, but half done." Antony was the big bad wolf looming over the sheep of the Republic. And I want you to keep that in mind. But before we focus on the big bad wolf, there was another little wolf cub that happened to be out of town when Caesar died, Octavian. In March 44 BCE, the sickly young boy Octavian was out somewhere around Albania studying astronomy. Because of course the allergic to everything nerd was studying astronomy. Of course, goddamn, if this was a movie or an anime, I would be like, that's too many cliches. God, but this is real life. And obviously, the boy educated and raised by Caesar's sister was loyal to the dead dictator. Him and Caesar had history. Back in 51 BCE, when Julia, Caesar's sister, died, Octavian, who then was only 12 years young, held the oration. And when Caesar went on to a war campaign in Spain in 46 BCE, Octavian went with him. Well, he wanted to. His allergies acted up. His hay fever started acting up, so he couldn't go. I shouldn't laugh because I actually have hay fever too. But I'm serious, like his sickness started acting up. He couldn't go. Octavian fell ill and missed the entire war campaign. And then by the time he joined up with Caesar in Spain, it was way too late. And Caesar was just like,
"The battle is over. We have won."
The point is, Octavian missing the war campaign of Caesar became a running joke in Rome, and everybody ended up calling him a coward, convinced that he missed it on purpose. Sickness? Yeah, right. But remember this. It's a side note only for now. We will come back to this later as a reason I plugged this here. For now, you just need to know this to be aware that Octavian was obviously close to Caesar, loyal to him, and everybody knew that. And Octavian knew that everybody knew that, so he knew that he would be next on the hit list. And while he was there in Albania studying his astronomy books at 18 years young, he was scared and consulted his best friend Marcus Agrippa on what he should do now that Caesar was dead. And you really have to know that Agrippa and Octavian was like the Roman version of the Pinky and the Brain.
The Pinky and the Brain, yes, Pinky and the Brain.
Except, yeah, actually not, because Agrippa was not stupid like Pinky and not weak as hell and skinny as hell like Pinky. So imagine them like Octavian being the brain, yes, and Agrippa being like the swole Pinky. You know what I mean? Like the swole Pinky. Yeah, they were the swole Pinky and the brain. Best friends since childhood with an unbreakable bond, because years ago, when Caesar was fighting a civil war, swole Pinky, Agrippa's brother, had fought against Caesar in that civil war and was captured. But thanks to the brain, Octavian, who was pleading on behalf of swole Pinky, the brother was spared by Caesar. So swole Pinky, Agrippa, and brain Octavian were loyal best friends for life. Alright? So here they were. Albania, 44 BCE. Brain Octavian is reading some astronomy book, and swole Pinky Agrippa is doing biceps curls or something, I don't know. And they hear the news of Caesar's death, and Brain Octavian is like, I don't think I can ever go back to Rome. They're gonna kill me. And swole Pinky Agrippa is like, bro, it's your destiny. Curling, biceps curls. It's your destiny. You always get your head up in these books, all up in these stars. This is your chance to actually be one of those stars. And he was proud of that line, and Brain Octavian was like, I'm not gonna lie, bro, that was pretty deep. And so, so stupid. And so the Pink Agrippa and the Brain Octavian decided to return to Rome. Meanwhile, the other man that inherited Caesar's will of fire also made his return to Rome, Mark Antony. Mark Antony at the time was actually the consul of Rome, which after Caesar kind of broke things, sometimes felt more like an empty title, but still, he was a consul. It has some meaning. And Antony had a job to do: avenge Caesar. So Mark Antony returned to Rome in late March of 44 BCE, just weeks after Caesar's death, and publicly read Caesar's will to the people, who were still in mourning and were delighted to see Mark Antony, because again, he was Caesar's right-hand man, the natural heir to Caesar's will of fire, so who better to read the actual will? And Antony read that thing out loud with confidence, like, I, Gaius Julius Caesar, first of his name, breaker of chains, mother of dragons. Sorry, man. Sorry, guys, I was watching a Game of Thrones marathon while I was in hiding after my best friend was killed, and I left you guys alone with his killers in the city. I'm sorry, I was acting like a coward. Anyway, I, Caesar, in this here will, declare that I give all my cash to my adopted heir, Gaius Octavius. What the fuck? Yeah, Caesar gave all his money to Octavian and made him his heir. Like, posthumously? Is that the word, posthumously? Posthumously adopted. This is serious stuff. Like, he really meant that. He also left 2 months of salary for each Roman citizen to be paid from Caesar's riches. That again, all went to Octavian. Like, Caesar basically left Octavian everything and left Antony nothing. And Antony was standing there with the will, and he was like, ah! Does anybody want to hear this crap? Like, really? I mean, he's dead now. Was that? May never die, right? How about them Greyjoys? Let's talk about Game of Thrones and get drunk. Anyone? And from that day on, Antony tried to bury Caesar's will and tried his best to make the people believe that he, Mark Antony, was to be Caesar's successor, not the weak boy Octavian. And since the people genuinely loved Mark Antony and knew him to have had Caesar's trust, and he was a consul of Rome at the time, yeah, he had a legit case and the power to actually influence the public opinion. But denying Octavian his inheritance, I mean, it kind of started a beef with Octavian and Agrippa, because when Octavian heard the stunt that Mark Antony was trying to pull, he was like,
I have a very particular set of skills. Skills I have acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. If you let my daughter go now, that'll be the end of it. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you don't, I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you.
Well, Octavian did the talking and Agrippa did the walking, but the point is the thread kind of stood. And the point is, you don't mess with the pinky and the brain. Swole pinky and the brain. You get my point. A rivalry was born. Back in Rome, Antony used his power to get the people on his side and positioned himself as the one to carry on Caesar's legacy, and most of all, as the one to avenge Julius Caesar. And for that, Mark Antony got the people in a frenzy. Mark Antony, it was a drunk, a party guy. You know, he understood the people, he understood the simple things in life, and he was really good at riling people up, for better or for worse. So Rome got real hot for Caesar's assassins. It got real hot for Brutus and Cassius, so hot that they had to flee the city. The ones who killed Caesar to save the Republic were no longer welcome in the Republic.
Well, well, well. How the turntables...
So Brutus teamed up with fellow Republic lover and Caesar assassin Cassius, and they fled to Greece and Macedonia, where they governed over Roman territories, away from the mob and away from Mark Antony's influence. Now, you might be thinking, why does Antony not just kill them? Well, this is still a republic, even if it was falling apart, and since Brutus and Cassius held high positions, that still meant something in that republic, regardless of the people's current opinion of them, regardless of Antony's power. Antony did not actually have sole authority over Rome, so it wasn't easy to have Brutus and Cassius just killed. Chasing them out of the city to rule in Greece and Macedonia, that was the best Antony could do, for now. In order to do better though, Antony tried to gain more power, and in order to do that, he realized that he had to play ball with the system of the Republic. He had to align himself with the remaining Senate, with men of the Republic, in order to avenge Caesar, who tried to topple the Republic. I know it's confusing, it's politics. Mark Antony played both sides, and remember that all this time Octavian was now back in Rome, fully aware of the inheritance that Antony tried to keep from him, fully aware that Antony was trying to take Caesar's place, and fully aware of Antony cozying up with the senators, Republican faithfuls, Caesar enemies. Yeah, Antony was kind of a traitor to Caesar's cause. And what Mark Antony underestimated was that Octavian played the gossip side of Game of Thrones better than anyone else. And Octavian fiddled Antony like a play. Octavian played Antony like a fiddle. First of all, he made sure everybody knew the truth about Caesar's will. Then, he made sure everybody knew Caesar was going to give every Roman citizen money, but that Antony withheld it. And then, Octavian made a big show out of selling Caesar's villa and using the money to give it to the people. And then, the brain held the most lavish funeral games and ceremonies for Caesar. And remember how he had been off studying astronomy? Yeah, Octavian knew a comet was going to pass by during the funeral games. He made sure everybody in Rome saw it, and then he made sure to push the narrative that this funeral comet was a sign that Caesar had just ascended to become a god. And why go to such lengths? Well, because thanks to Caesar's will, Octavian was Caesar's one heir, his one son, right? So Caesar was now officially Octavian's name. He was Gaius Octavius Caesar, and he was not only the son of the late and great Julius. No, thanks to the comet stunt, Gaius Octavius Caesar was now the son of a god. He was Divius Filius, a title he would later officially adopt. But when I tell you that there's levels to this stuff, man, Octavian played this game like... Once the people heard of Antony cozying up with the Senate, withholding money, coupled with the lavish display Octavian just put on for them in the honor of their hero Caesar, the public opinion of Mark Antony changed with a quickness. Octavian now had the people's support. He beat Antony at the game that Antony foolishly started.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally? You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it.
So now, Antony was down and out. His time as consul was up. The people didn't have his back anymore, and the Senate now saw no benefit in associating themselves with Mark Antony. Everything that Antony had planned blew up in his face. He became enemy of the state #1. The Senate wanted him gone because he was power-hungry, impossible to control, a constant threat that follows Caesar's ideology and doesn't care about republic. And the people didn't know what to believe about Mark Antony anymore. So in 44 BCE, Mark Antony left for Gaul to do a bit of governing and war stuff, and mostly just to get the hell out of Rome. And usually, getting the hell out of Rome works for most. It worked for Brutus and Cassius, but it didn't work for Mark Antony. He had done too much. It was too dangerous for the Senate to keep alive, so they sanctioned 2 legions to go after Antony and take care of him, and Octavian was assigned to go with those legions to hunt Antony down. And yeah, I know, Octavian joined the Senate-sanctioned legions to hunt down Mark Antony after he publicly dragged Mark Antony for cozying up with the Senate. The thing is, it's all about narrative. To the people, Antony didn't have a good narrative for his Senate dealings, just that he wanted more power. But Octavian's narrative was that he was chasing the man who kept Caesar's will from the people, the man who kept money from them, and the man who betrayed them. The people didn't care who Octavian teamed up with at all. All they cared about was that Mark Antony was dealt with, an enemy carefully and masterfully constructed by Octavian, who knew that once the people have a common enemy to hate, they lose sight of all context. There is some relevant social commentary in here somewhere. Octavian controlled the narrative, and so he had the people's blessing to go off with the Senate's legions to confront Mark Antony. The Senate knew Octavian was Caesar's successor, yes, but he had made no claims to power, so to them, he seemed like a friend of the Republic. They trusted him. And when the Senate-sanctioned legions, led by Rome's 2 consuls and joined by Octavian, finally confronted Mark Antony in Gaul, the 2 leading consuls conveniently died, and Octavian took sole control of the legions and then teamed up with Mark Antony to combine their powers and overthrow the Senate. I know, plot meet twist. When I tell you Octavian was devious, you get me. The brain. The boy was playing everybody, and he was only 19 years old at the time, but God, he was a master at this game. And there was no reason for 40-year-old Mark Antony to deny his idea to team up. Octavian now had legions. He was obviously a supporter of Caesar and not a fan of the Republic. Him and Antony had the same goals. An alliance made too much sense. So in 43 BCE, they made the alliance official by teaming up with another Caesar supporter, Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, who was also about that life of ending the Republic. And since avenging Caesar was the goal all 3 of them had in common, they called themselves the Second Triumvirate. But don't be fooled by Lepidus being one of the big 3 here or something. No, but it's not a big 3. He had enough influence to give Antony and Octavian more power, sure, but if Octavian was Kobe and Antony was Shaq, then Lepidus was like Derek Fisher. If basketball is not your thing, if Octavian was Beyonce and Antony was Kelly Rowland, then Lepidus was Michelle. Or if Octavian was Paul McCartney and Antony was John Lennon, no, wait, Ringo Starr is actually pretty big. The Beatles have more than 3. Anyways, you get the point. Lepidus was part of something larger than life, yes, but ultimately only immortalized thanks to the other 2. Ultimately, nobody cared about him. Doesn't matter. He still completed the second triumvirate, and now Rome was about to change forever. The second triumvirate was essentially a dictatorship of 3 men who now controlled the Roman Republic. It was an open secret that each of these men, Octavian, Mark Antony, and Lepidus, was out for personal glory and power. I mean, there was a reason they were Caesar fans in the first place, right? Each one wanted to rule, but neither would openly admit it, and only together they were powerful enough to do the 2 things they did next. First, they carved up Rome. Octavian got the west, Antony got the east, and Lepidus got the south. And once that was settled, next they did something which to me is absolutely more hardcore than anything Caesar ever did. They killed off the Senate. Literally. In 43 BC, they announced the Purge.
Triumvirate edition.
I'm serious. They revealed so-called prescriptions, which officially was a list of 2,000 random Roman citizens that had to forfeit their property and lives, but really it was a list of 2,000 exact people that the Triumvirate wanted to kill for their money. It definitely was 2,000 random people, and it was specifically wealthy people they had beef with, and it also ended up being way more than 2,000 people, more like 3,000 or more that were killed. And mind you, this is not outside of Rome. This is Roman people, thousands of them, that were killed within Rome. And just so you understand, a Roman legion, you know, the ones that go to war, a Roman legion consists of 5,000 soldiers, and when it fights, not all of them usually die. So more than 3,000 people in Rome dead, innocents, non-combatants, that's a lot. And you might hear this and think, damn, I thought the Republic was corrupt and full of backstabbing, and Octavian and co wanted to change that, give it back to the people like Caesar intended, not just kill them, not kill the people. And that's true. But it's also true that in order to achieve that goal, they needed and had to get their hands on money. And for that, they had to go over dead Romans.
Do your people know how many innocents you have killed?
Was it hundreds?
Yes. Lie to me again, and I'll open you from your belly to your brain and feed you your intestines.
Thousands.
And when you put them to the stake, what did you feel? Shame? Horror? Power? Answer me!
Nothing. I felt nothing. A greater crime than the act itself.
Then why spill blood, if not for the pleasure of it?
Because men do not fear swords. They fear monsters. They run from them. By putting one village to the stake, I spared 10 more. Sometimes the world no longer needs a hero. Sometimes what it needs is a monster.
Now the Triumvirate had enough cash to solidify their rule, and amongst the people they purged, by the way, was 300 senators, a third of the Senate. So now, everyone that had anything to say was either dead, was bought out by the Triumvirate, or in the case that neither applied, well, let's just say it played out something like this.
Look at me.
Sure.
Look at me.
Sure.
I'm the captain now.
And remember how Brutus and Cassius ran away to be governors of Greece and Macedonia because within the system of the Republic and with the backing of the Senate, they were still protected? Yeah, now that the 3 Caesar riders were in charge, and Brutus and Cassius were not safe. Octavian and Antony were coming for them. And they left Lepidus behind in Rome. You know, like in those movie scenes where the loser of the group has to stay behind to watch the call while the cool guys go and kick ass. In 42 BC, Antony rode up into Macedonia to fight Cassius. And although the battle could be said to have been a draw, Cassius believed that he was defeated, and he took his own life. And I know you probably thought it would be more epic than this. Like, finally, they confront the traitors. I'm sorry, I mean, that's just how it went down. It was easy. One traitor down, thanks to miscalculated suicide. Octavian and his troops, meanwhile, rode into Greece to fight Brutus. But Octavian is simply not that military savvy. Brutus outsmarted Octavian and forced an early battle, defeated his troops, and was then looking to kill Octavian, but Octavian was conveniently not there. Conveniently missed the battle, nowhere to be found. Another bout where his illness kept him away from the camp. Remember how I told you he once missed Caesar's campaign in Spain in 46 BCE 4 years ago? And I said I would come back to that. Yeah, right now we're coming right back to that. Caesar was then waging war in Spain, and young Octavian was supposed to join him, but he fell ill and missed it. So word was spreading that Octavian is kind of a coward. To fight the rumors, Octavian then forced himself to ride to Spain despite being deathly ill. But by the time he made it there, Caesar had already won. Of course, there was no way Octavian could have known the battle was over when he started the journey, and so he took a real threat of dying or riding into certain death in Spain. So that kind of silenced the coward rumors back then, and Octavian earned Caesar's respect. But now, the exact same thing happens again. When it's time for the big battle, Octavian misses it because he's sick. Everybody knew Octavian literally had no immune system, but this timing, twice, it was too convenient. Octavian missing the battle to avenge Julius Caesar and to kill the traitor Brutus, it changed Rome's perception of Octavian. Octavian was once again considered a coward. And it didn't help that after Brutus defeated Octavian's troops, it was Mark Antony who came to the rescue and defeated Brutus, forcing Brutus to then also commit suicide. So let's summarize. Mark Antony and Octavian ride out to fight two battles, and Mark Antony literally fought and won both battles. Without Mark Antony, this would have not gone well. He won this war. He killed Caesar's traitors. It was Mark Antony who avenged Caesar. But little sickly the brain Octavian was still a PR mastermind, and Octavian knew exactly how to take control of the situation, and he made sure that after the battle it was he, Octavian, who cut off Brutus's head, sent the severed head back to Rome and have it displayed before Caesar's statue so that Rome knows that Octavian gave them the traitor's head. I mean, does anybody right now really dislike Octavian? But at the same time, it's kind of thinking, damn, bro, well played. Like, snitchy, allergic weasel is really a gangster when it comes to mind games. Well, what can you do? And when the fighting was over and Caesar was avenged, Octavian returned to Rome, while Antony returned to the eastern territories, to Egypt. And that meant that while in Rome, Octavian could control the narrative even better now. He deaded the Octavian coward talks by building military statues of himself and putting military imagery of him on coins, and changed the narrative of how the whole battle went down. Yes, Antony might have been the power in the wars, the muscle that won the battle and the one to actually avenge Caesar, but Octavian knew that
power resides where men believe it resides.
Back in Rome, Octavian had to deal with a new problem. While Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus had all the power on land, the one in charge of the Roman Republic's navy was Sextus Pompey. And as you probably guessed by the name, yes, he is the son of Pompey. And if you didn't guess that, because I never mentioned Pompey in this video, I mean, damn, this terrible structure. All right. Quick Pompey flashback. Who is Pompey? Back when Caesar was on the rise to do his whole dictator thing and to end the Republic, Gaius Pompeius Magnus, aka Pompey, was the face of the Republic. He was traditional, conservative, a general so great that he was nicknamed Pompey the Great, and saving the Republic was his cause. So people like Brutus were loyal supporters of Pompey. Ultimately though, Pompey was defeated by Caesar and died, and with Pompey gone, Caesar finally kind of ruled Rome until Pompey's supporters finished the job and killed Caesar, which they did in Pompey's honor and in the name of the one true Republican, Pompey. And now you know who Pompey was. So here we are in late 42 BCE, and Pompey's son, Sextus Pompey, controls the navy. And needless to say, he was not a fan of Octavian, he was not a fan of Antony, and he didn't care about Lepidus, because no one cares about Lepidus. Octavian tried to smooth his relationship with Sextus over by marrying his aunt Scribia, but honestly, man, if my enemy marries my auntie to try to make himself my uncle, bro, that's a mad trigger. That's gonna make me angrier. And it really didn't make Sextus like Octavian anymore, nor make him feel like their family. So once Brutus and Cassius were dead, it was on Sextus to uphold the legacy of Pompey and save the Republic from the power-hungry triumvirate. And he decided that the best way to do that was to make Octavian's life hell. And the way to do that was to make innocent Romans suffer. Again they had to suffer. The Roman people were again pawns in a conflict between those who were trying to uphold the Republic and those who tried to abolish it. Again, they could not enjoy peace, because Pompey controlled Rome's navy entirely, and he controlled it from outside of Rome, from Sicily, so he used it to blockade all food supplies and trade to Rome, and he starved the city. And there was nothing Octavian could do because he had no navy. Egypt had a navy, but that was Mark Antony's territory, and Octavian was not about to ask Antony to win another battle for him. So instead, the people of Rome starved. And Octavian held a banquet called the Feast of the 12 Gods, where rich people dressed up as gods and got stuffed and was just stuffing their faces. Like, during a famine, you hold a feast, a banquet where they dress up as gods. That's bro, read the room. And you really did that. By now, you must have realized that public opinion in Rome is in constant flux. And with everything that was going on, Octavian's stock was in free fall. And to make all this even worse, yes, worse than holding a banquet while people are starving, to make all this even worse, when Octavian returned from the war with his legions, the veterans needed lands. They needed to settle down. So Octavian took lands from starving farmers and gave it to his soldiers. And to make that even worse, with the supply lines from the seas cut off, the crops from the farms were more important than ever. But these veteran soldiers were terrible farmers, so Rome had less crops than ever at a time where they needed their crops more than ever, which made the Roman famine much, much worse. Octavian really fumbled this entire situation, and this could have been where it all ended for the brain, but swole pinky, Agrippa, to the rescue.
The pinky and the brain.
Marcus Agrippa saved Octavian's ass, and this whole situation really is a great example of how Braintavian and swole pink Agrippa were the perfect combination. In 37 BCE, after years of food shortages that got worse and worse, Octavian and Mark Antony made a deal in order to renew and keep the triumvirate going. And yeah, Lepidus was just going to go along with whatever they say. Forget about Lepidus. Octavian would give Antony 4 legions, in return 420 ships. Both signed off on a deal. The triumvirate was keep going, yay! And Octavian received the ships, and then he just never sent Antony any legions. And then the swell pinky Agrippa had a lake dug within Rome. A lake dug within Rome, and he then trained a navy in the lake he had dug within Rome. You know how crazy that is? With the ships that Antony had sent them. And in 36 BCE, Agrippa took out the lake-trained navy, took them out into the actual sea to fight Sextus Pompey, and he whooped him. The pinky and the brain.
The pinky and the brain.
Sextus was finally defeated. Rome could eat again. And as for Sextus's aunt, Scribia, the one that Octavian had married to try and bully Sextus, he didn't need her anymore, so he divorced her a couple of days after she gave birth to their first daughter. As cold as hell. To make that even more heartless, Octavian then immediately hooked up with a new woman, Livia Drusilla, who already had a son, Tiberius. Oh, and if you're wondering about Mark Antony's love life, well, basically, Cleopatra, and more Cleopatra. Antony was all up in the Egyptian queen, like,
All done! All done! All done!
I don't need it. I don't want it.
What's up?
on paper, he was married to Octavian's sister Octavia, by the way, a purely political marriage that was formalized in 40 BC just for the sake of the triumvirate, but in reality, Antony was all up in Cleopatra all day.
All day, son.
And I'm not going into too much detail on Cleopatra here because she would get her own video. But Cleopatra at the time was the legitimate queen of Egypt, and Egypt was a vassal of Rome, meaning it owed fealty to Rome, and Mark Antony and Cleopatra were the power couple ruling it from Alexandria as kind of the capital of Rome's eastern provinces. And Mark Antony loved Cleopatra and Egypt and basically paraded himself around as the pharaoh with his Egyptian queen. They had children, all that, which sounds cute, sounds like a happy family in that, but he was basically married to Octavia, right? I mean, he was married to her, and in Rome, they didn't like that he was all lovey-dovey with a foreign Egyptian queen, having children with her and that. Like, God forbid. Maybe he wants them to be his heirs? I mean, that would be...
That is blasphemous!
And Antony really should have known better, because falling in love with Cleopatra and openly declaring it was already a part of Caesar's downfall. And also by now he should have known that Octavian will use any chink in your armor to exploit it. Octavian still had to battle allegations of being a coward and of Antony saving his ass, so this whole Antony and Cleopatra controversy was perfect. He spread word that Antony had gone native and is abandoning his Roman wife, Octavian's noble sisters. That it was another masterstroke of Octavian, and it got the people back on his side. And then when the triumvirate officially expired in 33 BCE, Octavian followed the Antony slander up with another Oscar-worthy performance. He acted like he's happy that the triumvirate is over, like he never sought power in the first place, that he only did it to bring stability to the Republic, all to make it seem like the power-hungry Antony over in the east is clinging to a seat and planning to align himself with Cleopatra and usher in a new non-Roman dynasty, while Octavian was only acting in service of the Roman Republic. And the only reason he would maybe seek to maintain any level of power would be to eventually take down the traitor Antony, who not only betrayed Rome and the people, but who Octavian, as a brother-in-law, felt personally betrayed by her. It was genius. And it worked. Rome loved Octavian and hated Antony. So while he was already hated, Antony was like, yeah, I'm gonna divorce your sister. And you think that all the stuff between the two that had gone down, it didn't really matter that he divorces his sister, but Octavian was furious. Divorcing his sister was the utmost disrespectful thing Antony could possibly do, and Antony knew that it would trigger Octavian, and boy did it ever. Octavian was raging. He marched right into one of Rome's secret temples where the wills of great people are held and stored only to be read after they are dead. Octavian stormed in there and stole Antony's will. This was an almost unforgivable crime, but Octavian did not care. He had completely lost his cool and was ready to tear Antony's will apart. But just before he did that, he decided to read it. And that was the best decision Octavian could have made. An emotional mistake turned into the smoking gun Octavian needed, because Mark Antony's will confirmed what the rumors suggested. Upon his death, Antony was really planning to grant the Eastern Roman territory to Queen Cleopatra and their children. And not just their children, but also the son she had previously had with Julius Caesar, a child that had at best been a disputed rumor in Rome, but Antony's will confirmed the offspring of Caesar's and Cleopatra's union, a boy Antony called Caesarion, the king of kings, the heir. This was not just a big deal, this was treason. And it didn't matter if you stood with the system of the Republic or not, this was treason against Rome, and this was the absolute dead end of any and all support Antony had in the capital, and this was another tool Octavian could masterfully use to his advantage. Remember how he gave up power? How he acted like he is a man of the Republic? Well, now Octavian, this great Republican, in the face of such treason by Antony, a man he had trusted, a man he called brother-in-law, now Octavian had no choice but to wage war against these foreign threats. Not a civil war. God, no. Not another civil war, not a war for the power of Rome. No, this war was against the evil, foreign seductress Cleopatra, who had to be stopped now that she had cast her spell on Antony with the lie of a son who claims to be Caesar's heir and wants to take Rome from the Romans. This war was not just necessary. Octavian painted it to be everything. He once again knew how to weave the right narrative. Once again, he knew how to acquire more power for himself, but to make it seem like he was doing it for the Republic. Once again, he managed to have the support of the Senate and the people when he led the battle against the traitor Antony. So it finally came to the epic clash that had been building up for years. A battle for the supremacy over Rome and its future. Octavian versus Antony. And that battle was super boring. Super anticlimactic. Like, seriously, it's the most one-sided, most boring battle in Roman history. Antony brought his forces to Greece, and Agrippa set out to meet him in battle. Then Antony docked his fleet in the bay of the Ionian Sea, where Agrippa trapped it in a blockade on both water and land, starved Antony's fleet for months, so long that many literally died of hunger, and then finally Antony's troops had no chance but to fight back, but after starving for so long, they were too weak to battle. And the battle known as the Battle of Actium of 31 BCE essentially went down like this. Agrippa whooped Antony entirely and absolutely. But Antony and Cleopatra managed to break through the blockade and fled to Egypt. But still, even then, they had lost everything. And what little troops and support they had left, well, this was where the brain Octavian made his move. Octavian gave amnesty to Antony's men, forgiveness to all troops that abandoned Mark Antony. He made it clear that he wishes them no harm, that he only wants Mark Antony and Cleopatra. And with that, man, he basically stripped Antony butt naked. Mark Antony had nothing left to protect himself. He knew it was over. So on August 1st, in 30 BCE, when he heard that Octavian and his fleet were coming to Egypt to end it all, Antony ended it first by taking his own life at age 53. And 9 days later, before Octavian could get his hands on her and parade her around Rome as a fallen Egyptian queen, Cleopatra took her life also. And to end the bloodline and kill any who might challenge his claim to the throne or his claim to be Caesar's only son, Octavian then ordered the death of Cleopatra's and Caesar's son, 17-year-old Caesarion. And that was the end of Mark Antony versus Octavian. Octavian won, and now Rome was his. The death of Mark Antony and Cleopatra was the beginning of Octavian's ascension to become emperor. The year was 30 BC. Octavian was 33 years old, and now he had completely brought Egypt under Rome's possession. But really, Octavian governed Egypt, was in control of its insane riches, along with him being in control of Gaul, Spain, Syria. Unofficially, one could say at this point that Octavian had turned the Roman Republic into his own empire, but officially, he was just in charge of these couple of regions. This was all A-OK by the corrupted, rotten rulebook of the Republic, and after he had all of Antony's loyalists executed, Octavian essentially had everyone in Rome either loyal to him or scared of him, so it was easy for him to control that official narrative. Oh, and Lepidus, Lepidus, the third guy, I forgot all about Lepidus, just like everybody else. Lepidus basically was entirely under Octavian's thumb too. Octavian kind of kindly retired Lepidus when he didn't need him anymore. You get what I'm saying? And with all of Rome in his pocket, at the pinnacle of his power, on January 13th, 27 BCE, Octavian announced his retirement from public life. Retirement. Just the latest stroke of genius by the brain, Octavian, a carefully calculated ruse to deflect any idea that Octavian was some kind of king. Also, that he could claim that he was only acting in the name of the Republic to defeat evil Antony and Cleopatra, as he was asked to do by the people and the Senate, which he controlled entirely, by the way. But the thing is, on paper, all that seemed to be true. Octavian didn't change any core institutions of the Republic. Everything he did was within its framework. It's just he had so many positions that he was the framework. Like, imagine it this way. If in a sports team, power is balanced between a captain, a coach, and an owner, well, Octavian just happened to be the captain, the coach, and the owner. And he got half the players on the team, and he got half the staff their job. He never made the crucial mistake Julius Caesar made to announce himself dictator or emperor or something. Just Augustus was smarter about it, and it worked. Everyone played along with it, and why not? No one had a reason to go against him, and honestly at this point, no one really had the means to go against him either. Rome belonged to Octavian, and now he retired and officially gave it back to the people. Retired from public life. I don't need this. This is for you. I just wanted to take down Antony. What a guy. It was perfect. But it was a ruse, of course. You know, like when musicians leave the stage and you know they're coming back, but they just want you to beg for that encore, everyone that had anything to say in the Senate and everywhere else in Rome was in on the ruse and did what they were told to do, demand that encore, beg for Octavian to come back, twist his arm so that Octavian could be like, shucks, guys, guess I really have no choice. What's that? What's that? You want to give me a new title? Augustus? Doesn't that mean like revered one? Or is it majestic one? I don't know. I need to brush up on my Latin, but okay, I'll take it. 3 days after he gave up power, on January 16th in 27 BC, 3 days later, Gaius Julius Octavius Caesar was officially granted the title Augustus, and from now on, he was known as Imperator Caesar Divi Filius Augustus. And if anyone somehow didn't know it by now, even the slowest person had to catch on. The Republic was dead, and the Roman Empire had been born, with Augustus as its first emperor. And I wish this would get more epic from now on, but while there are many epics about the Roman Empire and its emperors to come, this tale of Augustus is politics from here on out. Politics on how he rebuilt the foundation of Rome. Not so much exciting bloodshed and warfare anymore. Sure, he had some war campaigns here and there and conquered some territory, but by 20 BCE, the Roman Empire looked like this. And that's more or less what it would look like throughout its time. There was a significant war campaign in Germania where Rome lost, and which kind of ended Rome's plans for any further expansion. And it was a devastating defeat for Augustus, but that Germania campaign is too epic of a story to be a side story. Arminius and his defeat of Rome will get its own video. Augustus' reign as an emperor, though, was defined by peace within Rome, stability, and he completely changed the city. His reign as an emperor was truly great, and I mean, he perfectly described it in his own words. I found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble. There was only one problem. The great emperor Augustus did not have an heir. The man who was plagued by diseases throughout his life was also plagued by the fact that he never was able to create a male offspring. So at some point in 23 BCE, when he was sick and almost dying, he was so desperate, he even appointed his best friend, Swole Pinky Agrippa, as his heir. But you know, on some real Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark thing, because Agrippa didn't really want that position. But luckily it never came to pass, because Augustus survived and then married Agrippa to his daughter Julia, remember? The one born to Sextus's aunt, the woman Augustus divorced the day she gave birth to Julia. And then the plan was to make the sons of his daughter and his best friend his heirs, you know? That would have had a nice ring to it, it's kind of beautiful, but Agrippa and his sons, like, they all died before Augustus. Go figure. The man who was always sick all his life survived them all. So he ran out of options. Old man Augustus had no heirs, and he was forced to focus his efforts on educating his second wife's son. That was not his own son, but just his second wife's son from a first marriage, Tiberius. Tiberius was to be a successor, and Tiberius, let's just say, it was a special case that will get its own video. And I wish I could end this Augustus video on epic, dramatic moments, but all I can do is summarize Augustus's very smart and sound decisions that laid the foundation of the Roman Empire. While Augustus's rise to the top was bloody, his reign was not. And maybe that's why the foundations he laid were so stable that they outlasted a lot of the terrible emperors that were to rule Rome after him. So what did he actually do? What were those foundations? Well, let me give you some highlights. Augustus completely reshaped the city's appearance. At one point, building or renovating over 82 temples in 1 year. He also changed the army from privately funded soldiers owing allegiance to whoever was paying them to getting a salary and health benefits from the state, which put an end to all the civil wars, but also gave a lot of power to whoever runs the state, aka the emperor. But still, he turned the army into professionals and also established a professional police force and a fire department, which was huge because Rome was prone to fires, and now people weren't responsible for putting them out themselves anymore. Augustus drastically improved life quality and life expectation by building so many bathhouses. It completely changed the idea of hygiene in the city, and by also dramatically improving food security. Augustus improved the roads and all of Rome's infrastructure. He established a standing navy for Rome to protect itself against outsiders. And one major reform, which I know sounds boring as hell, was his reform to tax collection. Previously, tax collection was a private affair, and it was a subject to constant abuse of power and bribery, which led to official positions changing yearly. But Augustus turned tax collection into a state affair, which got rid of a lot of the corruption that had previously plagued the Republic and kind of ended it. And another major way he curbed the corrupt system was that Augustus established a new system where civil servants were chosen based on merit. I know it doesn't sound sexy like war, but it changed the Republic. And not all of his changes were popular, of course. The morality laws, by the way, they punished adultery by law and even sometimes by death, and punished unmarried people while promoting marriage with tax incentives and other advantages. The Romans didn't like that because they liked their sex, so the morality laws, it didn't go over so well, especially since Augustus was a massive playboy himself, like his sexual exploits. Still, his morality laws did improve morality, ethics, discipline in the Roman Republic, which at the time was a cesspool for debauchery, and Augustus changed that. So the bottom line is, Augustus fulfilled Rome's potential, and most of the things that you associate with the Roman Empire and take for granted, Augustus did that. And in my future videos throughout this series on Rome, you will see just how much of a hand Augustus had in the centuries to come, and how his shadow forever loomed over the Roman Empire, and why all emperors adopted the name Augustus in his honor. But even though Augustus was literally deified, the actual man was still mortal, and he died just like the rest of us, on August 19th in 14 AD at age 75. In his 40 years of reigning over Rome all by himself, Augustus finally brought peace to the realm. After a century of wars, this was a blessing. And by the time he died, most people had enjoyed his long and peaceful 4 decades of reign so much that no one wanted the Republic back. In fact, 40 years later, most people didn't even remember what it was like living in the Republic anymore. And those that were old enough to remember knew that before Augustus, the Republic was crumbling, the people were dying, and Rome was tearing itself apart. But now, after Augustus, Rome was thriving. Now, thanks to Augustus, thanks to the emperor, Rome was a glorious, shining empire. And it was only getting started. But more on that in the next episode of Rome's Greatest Emperors.